Paumaria tēnā koutou katoa. Look, it's a real privilege to have you guys here in our whare, and it's such a delight to share this with you. I thought that what I'd do today was share with you a bit about my leadership journey and a couple of the lessons that I've had, in the hope that you would take something away from it in your own leadership journey. This was my first leadership lesson, came from early 1900s. Does anyone know what this photo is? The world's most boring game, underarm bowling, none of those. Didn't think so. No, this is actually a photo of Bodyline. It is one of the most controversial matches that have ever played between Australia and England in the Ashes in 1932. And when I was a 7-year-old girl in Sydney watching the mini-series on this, my first leadership lesson came from this. The greatest cricketer, batsman that ever existed is a guy called Don Bradman. And Douglas Jardine was the English captain that beat him in the series. And when you go back through the history of it, what he did, he as a 10-year-old boy, he went away with his uncle to the Scottish Highlands, and the uncle said to him, "You don't bowl a batsman out, you think them out." And in that moment, as a 7-year-old girl, I was A, hooked on cricket, and B, hooked on strategy and tactics and how you win. And that was the first time I ever had that lesson. And so when I joined MYOB, we have a strategy to win. It involves payroll, it involves being local while our competitor is going global, but we've got a very clear strategy to win, and I take that into anything I do. And so the first message for you is have a strategy to win. The second message I wanted to share with you is a learning that on my leadership journey that I got from playing cricket as a high-performance athlete. So I captained Auckland and New Zealand A and played for New Zealand. And in that, there were really 3 key points that I take into my day-to-day life and as a leader and what I work on. The first one is that confidence comes from competence. So if I think about as a cricketer, and I got weak on confidence, I'm facing like Sophie Devine, who's one of our fast bowlers, and I was nervous about facing her. I would go away into the nets and dial up the bowling machine to 160 k's an hour, move 3 steps forward, and then just fire down tennis balls at myself to build up my competence on dealing with that situation, which built my confidence. And so as women, we quite often get feedback sometimes that, I think she might be lacking in confidence. And so my suggestion to you is, if you do feel that, firstly evaluate whether it's true, because I do think that sometimes people interpret that that's what's going on when it's not really. But if you do feel low in confidence, go and work on your competence and you will feel more confident. So that's the first piece of advice from my sporting career. The second one was really about action learning. Before we had Agile, we had action learning. And retros, we didn't have those. We had action learning and coaching for success. In sports, you have a coach who absolutely obsesses about the athlete performance. It's very people and individual centered, and it's about you getting the best out of you. When you come into work environments, there's a whole heap of other scenarios that are at play, and people don't obsess about you. And so if I think about in action learning, you go into the nets, you go, every practice as a sports person, you really think about, what am I going to get out of this? What's my goal for this session? You go and undertake it, and then you reflect on how you did. And so in my role at MYOB, an example of how I've used these 2 things around action learning and coaching for success is our company purpose is to help businesses succeed. And I thought about that quite deeply and thought around, well, who's going to do that? And I decided, okay, it's my team. My team are going to help businesses succeed. And I thought, well, who's going to help them? Well, it's going to be my people leaders. So for 2 years, I started up a series with my people leaders called Success Makers, where we would every month meet and talk about leadership and how we were leading. And we would we'd reflect first together around what we'd done the past month, what we'd learnt, what we hadn't. Then I'd introduce them to some new topics or content around, could be change management, could be whatever was the big focus of the day. And then we would discuss that, and then we would agree what actions we're going to take out of it. And so for my team, I lifted engagement from 68% to 86% as a result of this. And so it's just an example of how you can take action learning and coaching for success and apply it into a business environment and have an impact. So then the last thing I wanted to talk about was clarity of purpose. And so I had the objective, reflecting on my career and what I'd done, where 3 years ago I sat down and thought about, okay, who I've been for the last 20 years is not who I want to be for the next 20 as a leader. And so I thought really deeply about what's the impact. For a whole year I thought about what's the impact I want to have for the next 20 years. And I first started off with I wanted to create well-being. And then when I thought about that, I was like, well, corporates have stolen the word well-being, and so what does that really mean? And then I decided, actually, I really love co-creation and actually doing it together. And I thought about the impact that it was going to be, have an impact on individuals, organisations and communities. And then I've refined it recently to ensure my family's a part of that. And I want to ensure they flourish. And so that's kind of nice. It's a nice, big kind of purpose. But I thought about the areas where I really wanted to have an impact inside of that. So women in sport is something that I play heavily in. But the other thing I play heavily in at MYOB is around helping organisations flourish. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you is because when you're busy, I'm time poor, I've got 2 kids, you've got to really get focused on where you want to have an impact. And the best way to do that is to really focus on your purpose and what you care about. And so I talked a bit about how I wanted to have organisations flourish, and then at MYOB, our impact is to help businesses succeed. After I created that purpose, I then looked at, okay, so that's the impact. What's the industry I want to play in? Then what's the company? And then the role. And quite often we think about what's the role and then the company and then maybe the industry. But what I'd encourage you to do is firstly think about your purpose, then think about the industry and then the company and then the role. And so from a point of view of MYOB, what we've been able to do since I've been here is really focus on our impact in that community. And so we do a bunch of things around, particularly in the startup space. Head Start for Startups last year was, we put hundreds of companies up, contributed to going into a competition for $100,000 to focus on a startup in terms of value. Or I was privileged enough to work with Mahuki at Te Papa and award the Woman Entrepreneur of the Year for New Zealand to Lisa King from Eat My Lunch on Monday night. And so once you get clear on your purpose and then the impact that you want to have, it's a lot easier for you and you become more refined about what you do. So that's it. So it's the 4 messages really was around always have a strategy to win. If you're really focused on it, competence builds confidence. Action, learning and coaching for success. In leadership, really focus on the people and ensuring that they succeed. And lastly, focus on your clarity of your purpose and your intent, and it'll be a lot easier for you to have an impact in the community. And that's it.